He was just a tired, single dad, rushing to get his son ready for school, when he saw her, curled up in the corner of his yard, eyes swollen, clutching a bag like it held the last piece of her soul. He had every reason to walk away, but instead, he invited her in. What he didn't know, that woman was an architect with a dream, and helping her would change everything. Before we begin, comment below and tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city name. I love seeing the places. This story reaches. The morning started like most others for Lucas Ward, but that didn't mean it was easy. His alarm hadn't gone off. It never did anymore. And his 5-year-old son Noah was already halfway into a cereal box by the time Lucas stumbled into the kitchen with yesterday's shirt still on. But that wasn't the odd part of the morning. The odd part was the woman curled up in the corner of his overgrown yard, just behind the broken-down shed where pine needles carpeted the dirt. Her arms were wrapped tight around a grey duffel bag, and her body was stiff, like she'd trained herself not to move too much in her sleep. Lucas stared out the window for a few seconds, blinking hard. Was he hallucinating? Nope. She was real. Thin, motionless. Her hair was knotted, her clothes damp from the morning dew, and her sneakers had holes near the toes. But what struck him most were her hands that looked like they were made for precision, not survival, fingertips stained faintly with ink or charcoal. He stepped outside cautiously, making sure Noah stayed in the kitchen. "Mom?" he called gently. She flinched hard, sat up too quickly, looked around like she expected someone to be coming for her. "I'm not calling the cops," Lucas said quickly, palms raised. "Just want to check if you're okay." She blinked at him, trying to find words. Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I didn't mean to trespass. I just needed a place to sleep." Lucas glanced at her. Duffel. It wasn't heavy, probably everything she owned. He looked down at her shoes, then at the bruising under her eyes. "You hungry?" She hesitated. Then with reluctant honesty nodded once. "Come on inside," he said, jerking his thumb toward the porch. "I made cereal, but I can burn eggs if you want something warm." Inside, Noah peeked up from the kitchen table, curious but not scared. "Daddy, who's that?" Lucas gave a calm smile. "This is a guest. She was outside and it's too cold. Can you help me set another plate?" Noah nodded like it was the most normal thing in the world. The woman stood frozen at the threshold for a moment, then slowly stepped in, shoulders still stiff. Lucas poured her a cup of black coffee and handed her a plate. "I'm Lucas, this is Noah. You got a name?" She hesitated again. "Avery," Lucas nodded. "Nice to meet you, Avery." She took the plate with both hands like it was made of gold. No one spoke for a few minutes. Then softly she said, "Thank you, you didn't have to." Lucas looked her in the eyes and said simply, "Everyone deserves shelter, especially on a morning like this." And right then, without him knowing, he'd opened the door to more than just his kitchen. He'd opened the door to a dream neither of them knew was still alive. Avery didn't stay long at the kitchen table. That morning, as soon as Noah was off to school and the dishes were rinsed, she offered to leave. "I don't want to be a problem," she said, standing near the front door, holding her duffel bag like a shield. Lucas crossed his arms and leaned against the wall. "You think sleeping in someone's yard makes you a problem? You're not. You're tired, cold, and human. Big difference." She looked down, jaw clenched. "You need a shower?" he asked gently. "There's one at the back of the house. Water heater's cranky, but it works. Towels in the cabinet." Avery hesitated. Lucas didn't pressure her. He just walked back into the kitchen and started wiping down counters like it was any other day. A minute later, he heard the bathroom. Dr. Click shut. That day, while Noah was at school and Avery rested, Lucas worked on his fence. One of the posts had rotted through, and the wind last week had knocked it sideways. As he hammered, he caught himself glancing toward the house more than usual. He didn't know her story, but he recognized the look in her eyes, like she hadn't just lost a place to sleep, but a reason to wake up. That evening, after Noah went to bed, Avery stood in the kitchen doorway. Her hair was washed and tied back, her clothes still the same, but hanging cleaner. "You didn't ask me why I was out there," she said quietly. Lucas didn't look up from the dish he was drying. "You didn't owe me that. I want to tell you anyway." He nodded, set the dish down. "I'm an architect," she said, and it sounded like she was confessing a secret. "I used to design homes for people who'd never meet me. I worked for a firm in Atlanta. But when my mom got sick, I came back here, couldn't keep up with bills, took too long away from work. Eventually they replaced me, and then Mom passed." Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. "I stayed in the house for a while, tried to freelance, but it wasn't enough. When the bank came for it, I didn't fight. I thought I'd save up, get back on my feet, but the jobs dried up. I've been bouncing around ever since." Lucas listened in silence. When she was done, he said, "Do you still have your blueprints?" Avery blinked. "What?" "Your designs, your sketches. Do you still carry any?" Avery slowly unzipped a pocket on her duffel and pulled out a weathered leather notebook. She handed it to him. Lucas flipped through pages covered in pencil drawings, some smudged, some torn at the edges. Tiny homes, modular designs, one labeled "House for Mom, Final Concept," with notes scribbled down the margins. "These are beautiful," he said, meaning it. Avery's eyes softened. "They're all I've got left." "You hungry again?" She smiled, faint but genuine. "Starving." Over the next week, she stayed in the small guest room off the kitchen. Lucas didn't ask her to leave, and she didn't overstep. During the day, she'd clean or sit in the yard, sketching. At night, they'd share quiet meals and swap stories. Noah liked her, called her Miss Avery, and asked if she could help with his art projects. And one evening, while watching Avery draw beside the window, Lucas asked the question that had been sitting in his chest. What would it take to build one of those? Avery looked up. One of what? Those homes. The ones you draw. She tilted her head. Why? Because I've got a half-acre out back, more tools than sense, and a shed full of leftover wood, and because I think you still want to build something that lasts. Avery stared at him like he'd just spoken a language no one had used. In years. Then she whispered, I'd need a team, a permit, materials, 1,000 things I don't have. Lucas leaned forward. But do you have the dream? She nodded. Then we start with that, he said. Avery hadn't touched a blueprint in over a year. Not seriously. Not the kind of drawing that kept her up at night, calculating angles and space as if each line had a heartbeat. But now there was a man who barely knew her, offering up his backyard and a pile of half-rotten lumber, like it was the seed to a future. Lucas wasn't rich. Hell, he was barely getting by. But his belief in her, so direct, so free of doubt, cut deeper than any paycheck ever had. That night she spread her drawings across the kitchen table. Lucas and Noah hovered beside her, one curious, the other munching on apple slices. This, she said, pointing to a clean-lined, compact design. This was going to be my mum's house, solar panels, low-impact materials, passive heating, natural airflow. It's small, but it's home. Lucas leaned in. It's beautiful and real, like something people could actually live in, not just dream about. She glanced at him. That's the point. By the next morning they had a plan. Lucas called. A few friends, guys who owed him favors or just liked the idea of building something with their hands again. Retired carpenters, a roofer he used to play ball with. Even his grumpy neighbor Phil, who hadn't talked to him in 3 years, offered to lend tools. Avery was cautious. Are you sure this isn't too much? Lucas looked her dead in the eye. You slept in my yard because the world gave up on you. I'd rather be too much than not enough. By week 2, the backyard had transformed into a soft-spoken construction site. Stakes in the ground, chalk lines marking corners, a borrowed cement mixer humming before sunrise. Avery wore her hair tied up and moved with the silent confidence of someone who remembered how to lead. She directed the volunteers with sketches and calm authority. Lucas followed her lead like it was second nature. They made a good team, no drama, no ego, just trust. At night, when the sawdust settled and Noah had gone to bed, they'd sit on the back steps with beers and aching muscles. "You know," Avery said one evening, "this isn't just a house." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "No? It's proof that I'm not done, that I can still make something beautiful from scratch." Lucas nodded, then said softly, "Funny, I was thinking the same thing, about myself. But life doesn't like straight lines." One rainy Thursday, a city inspector knocked on the door. Clipboard, vest, frowned like he was born with it. "Are you the owner of this property?" he asked Lucas. "Yeah." "And are you currently engaged in unpermitted construction in the backyard?" Lucas hesitated. "It's a shed," he lied. The inspector didn't flinch. "It's a foundation. There's a blueprint posted on your fence." Lucas cursed under his breath. "Look, we're not doing anything shady. We're building a small home. Not commercial, not rental, just something real." The inspector sighed, tapping his pen. "Without proper permits, that foundation's illegal. You could be fined, or ordered to tear it down." Avery came outside then, mud on her boots, rain in her hair. She recognized the tone of the conversation before she heard a word. "I'll fix it," she said quickly. "I'll submit new drawings. I'll go through the process." The inspector raised an eyebrow. "You an architect?" She pulled a card from her wallet. "Water damaged, but still legible." "Was," she said. "But I know the code." The inspector stared at her. Then back at Lucas. "You've got a week," he said. "After that, I file the violation." That night, Avery didn't eat. She sat at the table alone, redrawing every elevation by hand. Lucas brought her tea and watched her work. "I should have known better," she muttered. "I should have followed the right steps." "You were rebuilding your life," he said. "That doesn't always come with permits." She looked up, eyes heavy with tears. "What if this dream ends the same way all the others did?" Lucas leaned forward. "Then we fight harder, because this time you're not doing it alone." Avery didn't sleep that night. By sunrise, she had spread every revised blueprint across Lucas's kitchen table, labeled each page with clean architectural notes, and submitted digital copies to the city's residential planning portal using a borrowed laptop from the local library. Lucas found her passed out in the chair, arms crossed over her chest, pencil still tucked behind her ear. He covered her with a blanket and whispered, "You've done enough, Avery. Let me carry the next." Load. That morning, he cancelled 2 shifts at the auto shop and drove straight to City Hall. He wasn't the guy who usually stood at counters in government buildings. He fixed cars, not paperwork, but he stood in line for nearly 2 hours just to speak to the right department. He handed over Avery's revised plans with trembling hands and said, "She's a licensed architect. She's doing it by the book now. We just need time." The woman behind the counter, middle-aged, tired but kind, read through the application. "You're building this yourself?" "Yes, ma'am. For her. And for a little peace," he said. "For a new start. For a dream that deserves to be finished." She looked at the paperwork again. "I'll see what I can do." Back at the house, Avery paced in the yard. Her calm control from the early weeks was cracking. Lucas handed her the confirmation slip. "They'll come inspect next Thursday. But the paperwork's accepted. You're officially legal." Avery blinked. Her hands trembled as she clutched the paper. "You went down there?" Lucas shrugged. "Well, you did the drawings. I figured I could at least stand in line." She looked at him, eyes filled with something unspoken, gratitude, relief, maybe something more. And then, with a whisper that cracked, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Lucas swallowed. "You didn't let the rain stop you. You think I'm going to be the one to fold?" The work resumed, like wildfire. The walls went up. Insulation, siding, windows from a local salvage. Yard. Phil the neighbor donated shingles from his barn. A college student from town offered to help with solar panel wiring in exchange for a design reference on his resume. It wasn't just Avery's house anymore. It was the neighborhood's dream. And slowly, word got out. Local papers ran a headline: "Single dad and homeless architect build hope from the ground up." It was shared, talked about, respected, and then one day someone showed up that neither Avery nor Lucas expected. A tall woman in a sharp blazer stepped out of a rental car. She had the polished look of someone from the old world Avery used to belong to. "Danielle," Avery said with stiff breath. "My former boss." Danielle looked at the frame of the house. "You designed this?" "I did, with help." Danielle crossed her arms. "I've had clients asking for sustainable, community-backed projects. You were always the visionary on our team. You just disappeared." Avery didn't flinch. "I didn't disappear. I got buried. And now I'm digging my way out." Danielle nodded, then took out a card. "If you ever want back in, there's a space for you, senior architect, remote or in office, you name it." Avery held the card, but didn't speak. Danielle looked toward Lucas. "You must be the builder." Lucas smiled. "I'm just the guy who lent his yard." Danielle smiled. "Well, whatever you are, you helped bring this to life. That matters." When she left, Avery stood holding the card for a long time. Lucas finally said, "You gonna take it?" She looked at the house, at the muddy boots, the smell of fresh-cut wood, and Noah's drawings tacked to the porch post. "I'm going to finish this first," she said. The final nails were hammered in on a golden autumn morning Avery stood at, the porch of the home she designed with hands that had once clung to a duffel bag in the cold. Lucas stood beside her, Noah on his shoulders, and there, under an open sky and the smell of cedar, she whispered, "This isn't just a house." Lucas turned. "No," she smiled. "It's where my life restarted." He looked at her, eyes full of warmth. "Then let's call it home." The first night inside the new house felt surreal. The walls were freshly painted, a soft, warm cream. Avery chose because she said it looked like light trying to hold you. The floors were finished pine, not perfect, but rich with character. And the windows, they framed the stars. Avery stood in the doorway, barefoot, eyes wide, her chest rising and falling, like she couldn't quite believe the room was breathing with her. Lucas brought in a second-hand couch that barely fit through the front door. Noah carried in a tiny cactus Avery had once sketched in the corner of a blueprint like a joke. The moment they all sat down, three people from three different broken paths, something in the silence felt whole. Lucas looked around. "Well, we did it." Avery smiled, tears threatening. "No, you did it." He turned toward her. "We did it. You dreamed it. I just followed the lines." Word of the project kept spreading. A regional news station aired a segment about the yard architect and the mechanic dad. Donations poured in. Tools, materials, offers from young builders who wanted to learn from Avery's process. She decided not to return to the old firm. Instead, she launched her own practice, Foundation 33. Named after the number of nights she spent homeless before Lucas found her. It wasn't a charity, it was a mission. Affordable, sustainable, dignified housing. Her first client, a retired schoolteacher with a burned-down trailer and a broken pension. Lucas helped manage logistics, while Noah ran around the job sites like he owned the world. They became more than a team. They became family. One Sunday morning, after a community breakfast fundraiser, Lucas and Avery sat on the porch of her house. The sun was rising. The world was quiet, and she was tracing something on her sketch pad. Lucas leaned over. "What's that?" She held it up. It was a new design, a second home. "Thought we could build this one together," she said. "Side by side. Yours." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "You want to live next door?" She looked up, eyes steady. I want to live where you are." His breath caught for a second. He didn't need to ask what she meant. He reached over and closed her sketchbook softly. "Then let's start digging." Avery and Lucas broke ground on his new home exactly 1 year from the day she first slept in his yard. They never called each other saviors. They never claimed it was fate. They just called it grace, the kind that happens when someone looks at you, sees your worth before you do, and offers not a handout, but a foundation. And in the quiet rhythm of nails and hammers, laughter and low voices, they built something the world couldn't tear down, a place to belong, a place to dream, a place called home.